Hello and welcome to my podcast, What I Find Funny. My name is Deb Sherritt, and I'll be spending the next few minutes with you sharing the things that I find funny, either in my daily life, through the many diverse experiences I've had, or just some of the quirky or coincidental or ironic things that happen to make me laugh, give me pause, or just make me ask, what the... Funny is different for everybody, and just like beauty, it's in the owner of the ulnar nerve. Go ahead and Google it. In this episode of What I Find Funny, I want to share with you my personal experience with Ancestry DNA. All of my childhood, I heard my father tell stories of growing up in Blackpool, England during the Second World War. He'd have been around 10 or 11 when it started. He was born in November of 1929 and was about 16 when it ended. He'd had so many recollections, but the one thing he didn't know was his true heritage. He was given up shortly after birth to a woman I grew up to know as my Nana. His last name was Davies, and he believed he was the son of a shipping magnate from Blackpool who had an affair with his secretary, my dad's mum. He knew nothing more, and I believe he spent his life wondering who he really was and where he truly came from. And this was the basis for me taking the Ancestry test. I wanted to know what he never knew, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found out. Also, just for clarification, I knew my mother's heritage fairly well. Her family hadn't been torn apart by war. She had remembered her ancestry, and when I went looking, her heritage wasn't hard to find at all. But still very much exciting and jaw-dropping for me, as my father's. I learned that I come from a very rich line of ancestry. Now, maybe not as exciting as past lives where everyone is Cleopatra, James Dean, or Julius Caesar, but still. My search began when Honeybunch purchased an Ancestry DNA test for me for Christmas about 4 years ago. I took it very seriously and hoped for the answers I was seeking. The deal with Ancestry DNA is, you spit into a tube until everybody is thoroughly grossed out, and then you mail that off to Ireland, upon which it will be added to the trillions of other people having sent in their sample of spit. However, from the moment you open the test kit and you activate your account with Ancestry, you have the opportunity to 2 full weeks of what I refer to as a total pillaging and plundering of their historical files. Through that, and some pretty remarkable sleuthing on my part, I was able to ascertain my dad's mother, my grandmother's full name, Matilda Sumner. That connection introduced me to a second cousin named Neal, who is a master of everything and was able to trace the surname Sumner back to a family with 2 sons. One was my great-great-grandfather, and the other was Gordon Sumner's great-great-grandfather. Oh, you don't know who Gordon Sumner is? Well, let me introduce you to none other than Sting. Yes, that Sting. Lead singer of the Police, Grammy Award-winning Sting. As if that didn't fill in my head enough, I then found out, on my mother's side, Richard Starkey, a.k.a. Ringo Starr, drummer for the Beatles, his mother's maiden name is Gleave. And although they travelled from Cheshire, they settled in Liverpool, England, where my mother's family also travelled to. And my grandfather was Eric William Gleave, my mother's maiden name. And it seems that he and Ringo Starr's mother were cousins. Cousins. And so, if you follow my lineage, I'm a strong mixture of Sting and Ringo, or, as I like to call it, Stingo. And it didn't end there. After taking the test, I received a mysterious text message from a lady named Lee who identified herself and her mother as my second and third cousins. Through a series of fervent text messages, I was able to establish that Lee and her mum were related to me through my father's line. And no, not the Blackpool shipping magnate, as my father remembered, but a Portuguese family line named Rogers. My grandfather was named Godfrey Rogers, a traveling salesman from London who made his way up to Blackpool and met my grandmother, Matilda Sumner. The two created my father, Raymond Davies, a traveling salesman from Blackpool, England, who didn't know that, by lineage, his last name was actually Rogers, a Portuguese name, and that he would unknowingly name his son Roger, meaning my middle brother is really Roger Rogers. My father also used Rogers' family names, such as Samuel and Deborah, to name his other two children. Strange thing is, when I logged on to Ancestry's database, I had very little to go on. I eventually found my father's birth certificate with mother listed as Matilda Davies, but I found a marriage license for Matilda that stated she was Matilda Sumner and married a man named Davies. And they were married for over 9 years when my father was born, and they weren't listed in the consensus for that year as living together. He told me time and again that his brother Joe married Lady Venetia Stokes. Once again, the DNA testing and my newly found cousin Neal told me that my father's brother Joe actually did marry into aristocracy, but he married Lady Venetia Hay, the daughter of the 24th Earl of Kinnoul. To my daughter's delight, I was happy to tell her that through marriage on her granddad's side, she had a link to aristocracy. How proud am I to be able to tell you all that not only am I related to British aristocracy, but I'm also related to Sting and Ringo Starr. I couldn't be prouder. And just to keep you all up to date, I'll be fitted for a crown on April 12th. Although no measurements for my head circumference have been taken, they keep referring to my dental plan and benefits coverage. Regardless, I don't see a parade planned, but I do see where they're charging me over $700 for this crown. I just wonder, where's the bling in that? No diamonds or sapphires? Well, I think that speaks volumes for a lady of my standing, to be fitted with a crown with no coronation. And that is what I find funny. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of What I Find Funny. You be sure to hit that like button and follow me so you're notified of new episodes and uploads. And go ahead and leave me a comment. Surely I'm not the only one who has these kind of experiences. And, well, if I am, that's too funny. Try and find funny where you can, and take care.